One-shots are a type of manga that seem to be the exact same thing as a normal manga, but they have one key difference. A one-shot cannot be longer than one volume, and they usually go as far as to be just one chapter. Now, before I decided to make this video, I was very inexperienced when it came to one-shots, only having read the Tatsuki Fujimoto works and then Girl on the Shore by Ino Asano, and those one-shots that I did read were fantastic. The idea of limiting a story to just one volume is really interesting and feels like it's probably a huge challenge for the mangaka that decided to take it on, almost like a game jam. So I wanted to educate myself and find that if one-shots were a good form of literature. And the way I set out to do this was by reading 15 different one-shots. They were all picked simply from whether or not it looked interesting, but there's still a decent amount of variety in genres. Mostly romance though, what else did you expect from me? Anyway, this intro has already gone on long enough, so let's just get into the first one. Light Again. So Light Again is set in a post-apocalyptic world. Basically, Detroit. Following this destruction of the moon by a huge fucking meteorite, causing the world to lose its light. The story is set in a laboratory where they're doing experiments on these people called luminescents, and they're called this because they have an illness that makes them, well, luminescent. The scientists are trying to use these people to relight the world so that they can finally be outside again instead of being in these bunkers that they currently live in. In this laboratory, we meet the two main characters, Luna and Mitsura. Mitsura being one of the scientists and Luna being a child that unfortunately has this disease. Mitsura is set to care for Luna and, to put it bluntly, trick her. The experiments are incredibly painful, but the patients suffer through them with the promise of them being cured. But we learn early on that that's not the intent of the scientists. I really like this story. I think it got everything it needed to say said, and the character development they set out to do feels pretty natural, and that's really impressive in this short amount of time. They also got some really decent world building done in this short amount of time, giving you small glimpses into how most people live in this world in form of flashbacks, and giving you a good idea of how the technology is looking at the time. I ended the story with 0 questions about the world, and that is really well done by the author. The art was really cute as well as the character designs, and then the story ended very strongly. A really great story all in all, 9 out of 10. Live. Live is set in a zombie apocalypse with our main character Aoki just trying to survive his day-to-day life. As you know, doesn't tend to be the easiest in a zombie apocalypse. Unlike the story before, we don't really get much explanation as to why exactly there's a zombie apocalypse. They just kinda say that zombies just kinda spawned in one day, like someone switched the difficulty from peaceful. The other character of the story is Liv, who is the character this story is named after. She's a zombie. Aoki's wary of her at first, but she keeps following him and eventually even saves him from a horde of zombies. At that point, he decides to keep her around. I mean, she is pretty cute for a zombie, to be fair. This story is a lot worse than the first one, but I don't really think any of its problems come from it being a one-shot. Sorry, I have to spoil it to really explain, but basically Aoki keeps living his life now with this zombie being the only person by his side. Person in quotation marks, cause she's a zombie. It's hinted that she knew him before she turned into a zombie, and eventually he finds a love letter in her clothes after she falls into water. He makes the realization it was probably meant for him. He keeps going and eventually gives the zombie a name, Liv. And then she randomly starts talking, and as she's just about to say the 3 magic words, she gets shot. What the fuck was the point of this story? It set itself up to be about these main characters finding hope in this seemingly hopeless world. Aoki finding a person to spend his time with as he struggled a lot with loneliness at the start of the story, and Liv getting to be with her beloved despite thinking the hope of that turned to 0 once she turned into a zombie. That would have been a nice message. A nice cute little story to raise your mood and make you feel like there's still some hope in the world. But they snuffed that out. Why? What does the author want to say with the story? Why was it made? Is to say that everything is hopeless? When things are rough, should we just give up? Because at the end of the story, I really don't see what Aoki has left to live for at this point. The story feels like it wanted to give you some hope, just to snuff it out to get a few tears out of you. It's made just to make you cry, but the story has no real substance or point to it, so why should I care? Why should I cry? Overall, the story has a few decent things going for it, but it ended up throwing them away just to say, "Ha! I killed the cute girl, now cry, mortal!" 5 out of 10. I was wrong. This one was also pretty rough. So, I was wrong starts off with this guy Furia admitting to the reader that he murdered his girlfriend, and he's never been happier. His ex was, to put it simply, a yandere, stalking him, being jealous all the time, yelling at him, even going as far as to point a knife at him. Your typical psycho bitch. And eventually one day he just had enough and pushed that bitch down a flight of stairs. But guess what? She's back as a ghost. Called the fucking Ghostbusters, bruh. Now this story I will also have to spoil to really talk about it, since the whole thing basically is built up into a twist. Ooh, how exciting. So his girlfriend Ghostfang says that he has to help her get rid of all her regrets so that she can move on to the afterlife, or something. And Furia, seeing no other option, he agrees to help her. But he notices that all she asks for are normal couple things, like going on dates, holding hands, all that sort of stuff. And this makes him doubt the view of her he holds in his brain. And he starts to feel guilty about killing her, resulting in him killing himself. But that's when she's like, surprise bitch, I tricked y'all along! And now he has to live his life as a spirit, being tormented by her forever. Fun. Now, just like the last story, I have to ask, why the fuck was this story written? What's the point of it? It builds itself up to be this interesting psychological horror, with Furia questioning his own memories and feeling the guilt of his mistake. The story would have been better just him being endlessly tormented by his own guilt for what he's done. They should have kept his girlfriend as this misunderstood victim, since the story had such reasonable explanations for every bad situation he remembers being in. She explains that the reason she wasn't trying to be controlling was that she was just really nervous that the girls in class would try to take him from her, since she was very popular in class and had a lot of eyes on her. This is a really good explanation, and so are all the other ones provided. This story would have been way more interesting if it was about Furia getting together with his crush and then, in disbelief that someone he holds on such a pedestal would actually like him, he twists everything she does to make her seem like a horrible person so that it would make more sense in his brain. A cute girl would never date someone like me, so she must be really twisted in reality. This would be an interesting story concept, and a really unique take on the psychological horror genre. Instead of this one shot that basically exists just to say, oh, psycho bitches be crazy. You could have had a really interesting exploration into how self-hate and insecurity can affect a romantic relationship. Granted, this is a very extreme example, but that's what psychological horror is about, is it not? This story has some real promise, but it's gonna come down to another 5 out of 10. Blue Box. Okay, finally I can talk about a good story again. So Blue Box is the only one-shot on this list that also has a full-length manga that was created afterwards, and for good reason. Blue Box follows our protagonist Taiki as he tries to get closer to his crush, which is this girl Shinatsu from the basketball club. Taiki is in the volleyball club, and since they're both very hard workers, they're both the first to show up for their respective clubs. They see each other every day, but they still don't really talk. But Taiki is determined to change this. There's not much to really say about this manga, it's just a really well made romance. It feels like the story takes everything slowly, yet it's really short, so obviously that's not actually the case. But it's nice that the romance doesn't feel rushed into. The author takes their time to build up the relationship and the characters of these two kids, not relying on any montage or exposition to make the progression in the relationship believable, or to make you understand the character of these people. It follows the rule of show don't tell to a T, and becomes a great story because of it. This one-shot makes sure to make use of every single page it gets, since no matter what, this story will be short, but they want to get in everything they need to, and that's really well done, I gotta say. I think Blue Box is a very good example of how to do a one-shot right. 9 out of 10. Tokidoki. A very important part of Tokidoki is time. Matter of fact, I'd say the entire story has an underlining theme of time, which I think is an amazing theme to pick when you're writing a one-shot especially. Since, you know, when writing a one-shot, one of the things you really do not have access to is time. You can't drag your story out for long since you only have about a chapter to get it done, and that really is not enough time. And on that note, let me actually talk about Tokidoki. Immediately upon starting Tokidoki, you're greeted with the grave of one of the main characters, Hatsu Takagi. She died at the age of 21, a very young age to die, and this is the whole point of Tokidoki. We jump back to the second year of high school where our protagonist Hato is said to be interested in Hatsu. And then things happen and she tells him that she has an illness, which makes it so she only has a certain amount of heartbeats left before her heart stops. Now the reason the author went with heartbeats instead of years to live is because this forces Hatsu to pick between living a boring and long life or living out her life to the fullest, but it being short as a trade-off. Since when you do exciting things your heart beats faster and all that, I don't think you guys are so stupid that I have to explain how a fucking pulse works. Or at least I hope. Anyway, with the help of Hatsu tries living out her life to the fullest, despite the consequences. And I won't tell you how it ends, but let me tell you it's 100% worth reading to see the ending. Tokidoki is a beautiful story, with a powerful message delivered in a really clever way. Now the message is simple. Live your life to the fucking fullest. If you have dreams, chase those motherfuckers. Because what's the point in not taking risks if you're just gonna be unhappy with the way you have to live? I've always loved this mindset to the point where I follow it maybe even a bit too strongly, but we won't get into that here. Despite Hatsu actively knowing that every second she spends having fun is lowering her lifespan, she still goes for it and lives her life the way she wants to. So what's stopping you from taking a risk every once in a while? Really good shit this one, 9 out of 10. Ruri Dragon. So I just found out while writing this script that apparently Ruri Dragon also got a full-length manga earlier this year. Well, I'm too lazy to go back in my script and change what I've said, so... Anyway, Ruri Dragon feels more like a pilot than an actual one-shot, so I guess it makes sense that it got a full-length manga afterwards. Ruri Dragon is about this girl. I bet you can never guess her name. It's Ruri. Her name is Ruri. That joke was not even worth giving the time of day. Ruri wakes up one day to find that horns have suddenly grown on her head overnight, and her mom acts like it's the most normal thing in the world. Her mom does explain that it's because she's a half dragon, since somehow this motherfucker pulled a fucking donkey from Shrek and fucked that dragon. Ruri surprisingly goes to school despite still being really confused about why the fuck she has horns on her head now, and when she's there, being a dragon just fucks a lot of stuff up for her, and that's the story. Ruri Dragon is a nice idea. A half dragon having to adjust to these little changes in her life and slowly learning about herself each day sounds like a really cute slice of life that I can definitely see being an enjoyable read. As for this one shot, it just feels like this chapter 1 of a manga more than a one shot, and that seems to be its intended purpose. So like, I don't know, go read the manga I guess. 7 out of 10. Damdam. This one is kinda weird. So there's a monster attacking people, and the only people that can stop it is this bitch, Yamamo, who has a very noticeable superiority complex. And then this bitch, who gets called a bitch so much in this manga that might as well be her name. One of the first panels that these motherfuckers are in looks like this. So already Damdam sets itself up to be pretty fucking weird. So these people have a kind of dominatrix type relationship for some reason, and I'm talking about this too much, but this shit really made my jaw drop the first time I read this. Ignoring that, this story is actually really fucking solid. I want to start by just saying that this art is fucking amazing, like god damn, this is some chef's kiss type shit. But beyond that is also some really sick action and unique ideas. Damdam is basically just a fight scene from beginning to end. Starting off with the monster absolutely tearing through 90% of the squad sent to kill it, immediately letting you know that this isn't something to play around with. This one shot doesn't waste time, it hits hard and fast, throwing you into the action, establishing everything while you fight. You have basically 2 scenes before the fighting starts, and in those 2 scenes this story has to make you understand a lot of things. And it does. You get introduced to the 2 main characters and their relationship. You get an explanation as to what this monster is and where it comes from, and you get an explanation as to why these kids are fighting it instead of these adults. And it doesn't tell you this is some lazy exposition, it weaves it well into the story without disturbing the flow, since the reason they're explaining all this is because these squads of adults that are just here to get slaughtered gotta know just like you do. Now it's not like this short 10 scene is enough information to answer all of your questions, but it gives you a base understanding of what is going on. Basically it tells you everything it needs to. After this, all the information you pick up is through the fighting itself, which I love, especially how they did it when it comes to characterization. Damdam gives you insight into how these people are as, well, people, strictly through how they fight. Let me give you an example. So Yamamoto discovers that they can't look directly at the monster as this curses you, and one of the people about to get slaughtered tells her to just close her eyes and shoot towards his voice, shooting through him to hit the monster. This means that she would have to kill him. Now, he's definitely dead either way, but still killing another human being without hesitation is not easy. But not only does Yamamoto kill him without hesitating, no. She cracks a big smile right before. This moment alone tells you a fuckload of information about what kind of character we're looking at here. And I think this way of storytelling is really fucking cool. Now, I'm not gonna claim this is some groundbreaking new thing, but this story does it pretty well. All in all, I enjoyed it. 8 out of 10. Kamiya. So Kamiya is the only one-shot in this video with more than one chapter. I know I lied before, but this time it's actually true. Kamiya is about a doctor that's scared of blood. How the fuck does that work? Okay, whatever. And it also includes vampire prostitutes, because why wouldn't it? But I'm getting way ahead of myself here. Tanaka Sachi is the doctor I was talking about. You know, the pussy one. And she finds herself at a weird crime scene where the murder victim has no blood left in them. It has all been extracted through the neck. This reminds me of something. I just can't put my finger on it. Just quite vampires. Tanaka recalls hearing about this one host club named Kamiya, in which all of the hosts are vampires. Now, in case you don't know what a host club is, a hostess club is a type of nightclub found primarily in Japan. They employ primarily female staff and cater to men seeking drinks and attentive conversation. The modern host club is a similar type of establishment where primarily male staff attend to women. Now, through this host club, she meets Johan, who is a worker at said club and, well, a vampire, and she gets obsessed. The story is basically about how this obsession she has with Johan slowly ruins her life, and it's a pretty good read. The message this manga is trying to spread is obviously host club bad, especially with how all the hosts are portrayed as literal blood-sucking vampires. Like, it's a bit on the nose, but it does get the message across. Now, I've never been to a host club, so I can't speak on if this is an accurate representation or not, but I still enjoyed the story nonetheless. 7 out of 10. Johan could get it. Lawless Kid. This has to be my least favorite of the one-shots, and I'll get into why in a bit. But first of all, Lawless Kid is set in a walking social commentary. Sorry, I meant a city of straight trash. Basically Ohio. From the first fucking panel of this, it feels like it just hits you right in the face, telling you to take care of the environment. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for taking care of the environment, but you can be at least a little subtle about it. Basically, this is peak capitalism. This city has been cast away by higher society and is now just a giant trash pile where poor people live. So as I said, Ohio. And the poor people we will be following for this wacky adventure are Orga, who is the protagonist, his sister Haruka, and then his best friend Nick. Now, I don't like this story, and I'll tell you exactly why, but I do have to spoil it to do that, so like, beware I guess. You're not really missing out on much anyway. So this story starts with Nick selling Haruka. Yup. And then Nick and Orga have to go and get her back. That's the plot. They go to the big bad man that bought her, punched him, and then got her back. And then the city as a whole somehow got better. It's really dumb. My number one gripe with this story is how pointless it is. Like, why was this story made? I know I've said that a lot this video, but that's a trap I feel like is very easy to fall into if you're a story writer. Maybe you have this idea and you just feel like, let's make this, but you never think of why you're making it or what you're setting up to say, so you kind of make something just to make it, and that doesn't really end up well. At the start of our story, our main characters are living a terrible life in this trash hole, and at the end of it, our main characters are living a terrible life in this trash hole. Literally nothing changed. Oh wait, silly me. I forgot how they gave a big exposition dump in the end where they said that for some reason the defense force have become more quiet. Fucking why? If someone from this city literally just with ease went up and killed one of the rich guys these guys were supposed to be protecting, wouldn't they up their defenses to make sure it doesn't happen again? Wouldn't they get more on their asses, like, as a punishment at least? It makes no sense for the city to just suddenly become chill because he killed one rich guy. It's not like this was some important person like the mayor or the president. No, he just killed some slave trader. There should really be no difference, but for some reason there is. This story accomplishes absolutely nothing except being a fucking waste of time. 2 out of 10. What a pity we are. Now, to recover from the catastrophe that was the last one shot, we now have a nice romance to save us. The story follows Yukiya Iyama, who hates listening to the songs from Sado Natsumi, which is too bad for him since she's kinda really fucking famous. But it's not like he hates the songs, he thinks they're great songs, which is why he hates listening to them. It's the same kind of songs he would love to make, but he can't. Right after he says this, Soda Natsumi just kinda spawns, and we find out that they actually know each other from back in the day. They were both in the same class and they spent a lot of time together enjoying each other's music and improving together. This story is about the reunion, years after they last saw each other, with one of them living out their dreams and the other not so much. It's a very bittersweet love story with an interesting focus on the more negative emotions that can come with love, which most romance stories don't cover. Really solid little story, 8 out of 10. One-Armed Amy. This story is a real sweet one, the type you'd whip out to read when you're having a bad day. It's the story of this doll Amy and her father. Amy's father made Amy in the image of his real daughter, who he can't see anymore since he and his wife got divorced. So Amy's dad passes away. Yes, I know, very sad. And he gives her 2 letters for her to deliver. One for the owner of a local flower shop and then one for his beloved daughter. Amy sets out on this mission and that's what the rest of the story is about. It has a really beautiful ending, but I don't want to spoil it here, so I really recommend you give it a read yourself. One-Armed Amy is a wonderful little story about appreciating what you have and making the best out of every situation. It starts off a little sad, sure, but the ending is sure to bring a smile to your face. 8 out of 10. The heroes party on their way home. Now, to put an end to the good vibes, I want to say right off the bat that I'm gonna be spoiling this one, since it's one of those stories very reliant on the twist, so I wanna, talk about the twist, but that will spoil the entire thing, obviously, so do feel free to go read it now if you want to. It's really good and really short, so what reason do you have not to? So this story is, as the name entails, the story of the heroes party going home. But the twist is, get ready for it, they're all dead. You get to know this towards the end of the story, but basically Nina, who's the mage of the party, was the only survivor and is using dark magic to lead her friends home. This is one of those stories that is better on the second read because everything has such a different tone. The first time you go through this story, it has a very wholesome slice of life kind of vibe, since it's just 4 friends on a walk going home after defeating the Demon King. Everyone is happy, everything is wonderful, but reading through it again, it turns into a depressing and lonely journey. The hints of lifelessness in the heroes become overwhelming, and you feel almost stupid for not noticing anything the first time around. It's all really well done. 9 out of 10. Pen Pal at the End of the World. I'm gonna go through this entire thing start to finish, so spoiler alert, I guess. I highly recommend you just take like 5 to 10 minutes to read the story beforehand, because it's so fucking good, but if not, then that's fine. Anyway, let's just get into it. This story follows this little kid as she goes to the same art store every day to draw, with the only caveat being the fact that it's the end of the world. Or, alternatively, she's just living in Ohio. I need to stop making that fucking joke. She draws this character from this one anime she used to watch before the world ended, Miracle Momo. The story almost jarringly switches its focus from this little girl to these 2 grown men talking to each other about how hopeless this situation is. Why are you acting like we're gonna be living much longer? That's the vibe of this conversation. One of the men get bored and decide to take a look around, and by chance he finds the store the girl comes to every day. He sees the drawing the girl has made and immediately recognizes the character. He makes his own take on the drawing her and it's amazing. I drew again. He says, making it even clearer that this was something he used to do. But he stopped. Why? He goes back to his friend and talks about what he saw, and through this conversation we find out that he's actually the original creator of Miracle Momo. The girl gets there and sees the drawings he made, and she's overjoyed. She writes down a message for our old man to read, asking about the show. He replies telling her some plans he had for the show before an earthquake forced it to end. He talks to his friend about everything, and his friend encourages him to go see her. He insists she wouldn't enjoy seeing some crusty old man, but his friend insists upon it. He goes to see her and she's happy. It doesn't matter if he's some crusty old man, they both have a common interest and so they can get along. An earthquake happens and the store collapses, but they both make it out in time. A time skip occurs and now the little girl is all grown up. She's telling someone the story that we've been reading so far, and she also talks about how she's been trying to find the man ever since, but has been unsuccessful. But her friend here has hope that he'll come to see what she's been working on. Magical girl Mirara. She's continuing what he started. He told her all his plans for continuing the anime, and she's making them a reality. The story ends with a shot of the old man and his friend on their way to the premiere, just like her friend thought. This story is fucking beautiful. You can probably tell by how in-depth I went with this one, but I really love this one. This story is about hope. Everything in this story seemed so hopeless. I mean, it's about the end of the world for fuck's sakes, but still, this is a happy story. I didn't really feel sad for a single moment in this story, despite how everything seemed to have gone wrong for our two characters. And that's because this story is full of hope. It's about finding your own ray of light in the darkest of nights. Your beacon that shows you the way forward. Your parents when you're lost in the grocery store. What I'm trying to say here is that this story is about people who can find hope, even at the end of the world. So I guarantee you can find your hope wherever you are. 10 out of 10. A Parasol Alliance. This manga starts off with our main character Narita confessing his feelings for his crush. Or at least that's what he thinks. In reality, he's an absolute fucking dumbass and he accidentally confessed to her twin sister. And from this, he gets forced to now help the sister of his crush get with his brother, which marks the start of the Parasol Alliance. I know that was kinda confusing, just bear with me though. It's a Toradora kind of plot, except it's really short. I'd even go as far as to say it's too short. This story felt more like the build-up to a story more than a story all by itself, just like Ruri Dragon was earlier in this video. It's not bad per se, just doesn't fit well as a one-shot. No, even if it became a full story, it wouldn't really be anything special, just a cute little romance. You can't go wrong with this story, but it's really nothing to write home about. 7 out of 10. Now we finally arrive at the last one-shot, Lamenting God of Death. So Lamenting God of Death is the story of this kid Rondo, who just so happens to be a god of death. His job is to kiss people that are about to die to take their soul. His target for this story being this 8-year-old child named Honoka. Now before your pedo alarms go off, Rondo is also a child. We never get told his age, but his design and his behavior both mimic the ones of a child. And it's stated early in the manga that he's a newbie when it comes to being a god of death, so all you lolicon motherfuckers can leave now. Honoka is hospitalized with some kind of disease and won't live longer than a week. But there's something strange about her. Rondo arrives at her room and tells her he's here to kiss her, and then when he does, she will die. And she just laughs. Not because she doesn't believe him, but instead because she's happy, despite knowing that she barely has a week left to live. She tells Rondo he has to become friends with her before he kisses her, and he agrees to come back the next day. The manga goes on with them playing around and Rondo wondering why isn't she crying. You see, Rondo is a god of death, and gods of death can't cry, but he knows that humans usually cry when knowing that they're gonna die. Every other time he's gone to kill someone, they've cried, so why not her? He develops an interest in Honoka, which is what makes him listen to what she says. They keep hanging out and getting closer and closer, until one night Ronda decides he finally has to kill her. He goes to her hospital room just to find that she isn't there. He immediately starts panicking. What if something happened to her? He eventually finds her on the roof, crying. She doesn't want to worry her mom. She doesn't want to make her sad, so she spends every day smiling. But of course she's sad. She doesn't want to die. Of course it hurts. It's horrible. If I was an angel, I wouldn't have to make you cry like this, would I? The ending to this story is amazing, but you're gonna have to read it yourself to see how it ends. All in all, it's just a really beautiful story. 9 out of 10. Now, finally I've gone through all 15 one-shots. Honestly, I thought it was gonna take a lot less time than this, but it ended up being a pretty lengthy video, honestly. Now to gather my thoughts on one-shots. I think one-shots are a really amazing and criminally underrated way to tell a story. I honestly did not think there was gonna be any one-shots that blew me away, considering I purposely didn't include Tasuke Fujimoto. Don't worry guys, I know his one-shots are amazing, I've already read all of them, but I wanted to explore past that in this video. Most of these stories have only a few thousand members on my anime list, some even having a few hundred. I think one-shots are a form of storytelling that doesn't get appreciated nearly enough, with Tasuke Fujimoto having the only really famous examples. Well, there's also A Girl on the Shore, but that's like it. One-shots have the potential to tell some of the most beautiful, heart-wrenching, or happy and hopeful stories, and in a very bite-sized manner. It's definitely harder to cram so much emotion in such a short amount of time, but as we've seen today, it's far from impossible. I want you to walk away from this video with at least one-shot in hand, ready for you to read. I want to shed light on an unappreciated form of storytelling, because these stories deserve more recognition. One-shots are just as beautiful as any other medium of storytelling. That's the takeaway from today's video. So go fucking read some!